Hi everyone, welcome to a quick tips video today. I'm going to show you how I paint cool 40k hazard cables. So you've probably seen this a lot on miniatures in photography, where you've got cables and it's a yellow cable with black stripes on it, and it looks really cool, and it's quite a 40k thing. You only normally see it on those sort of miniatures. So I'm going to go through that process today, and I'm going to show you on this part of a Devastator backpack. It's quite cool. It's got some cables there. We can go over there and you'll be able to see the full effect. They're a little bit larger than most cables as well, so hopefully you guys can pick up what's going on. So the paints we're going to use today is, if I just quickly run through those. So we're going to need black, we're going to need Doomball brown, Scrag brown, Avalon sunset, Uriel yellow, Flashkits yellow, Dawn yellow, Ushabti bone, and Screaming Skull. And I'll put those in the description as well. And also, in case anybody is asking, because I get it quite a lot, this is a Winsor & Newton Series 7 size 1. That's the brush I'm going to be using today as well. It's my favourite brush. So we'll get cracking with that now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some Avalon Sunset on my palette. I've got all of my paints ready here on my wet palette. So first stage is Avalon Sunset over the cable. I'm going over a black undercoat now because it's probably what most people will be painting over. So I'm just going to do that. This has been thinned with a touch of water, so we'll do a few coats. I'm going to paint both cables so we can see what effect that will have as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat these now, a couple of coats, so there's no black showing, and then we'll come back to that and I'll show you the next stage. So I'll continue with this. Okay, so we've done a few coats of Avalon Sunset on the cables now, and they're nice solid colour. So that's a good base coat now. We can go over with a brighter yellow. So the next stage is to use Uriel yellow. So once again, we're going to water that down just a little bit on the palette, and then we're going to apply that over the entire area. So the Avalon Sunset really was just an undercoat for us to give a nice solid yellow. So we're going to go over the whole cable. We're just leaving just a little bit of the Avalon Sunset in some of the shaded areas. So underneath here, so the light is hitting from above. So we're going to leave the Avalon Sunset just underneath and at the ends of the cables as well. So these yellows, it's best to do a lot of thin coats with them. Just keep building it up. You'll find that if you try a thicker coat, they get very messy very quickly. So not too many thin coats if you want a nice smooth bold yellow. They dry very fast as well, so once that layer's dry you can give it another layer. So I'm going to continue to do that, brighten these cables up, and then we'll go on to the next stage in a minute. Okay, so now we've got a nice solid yellow over the cables. So that did take quite a few coats, so lots of thin coats as I said, and you'll get a nice solid yellow, but it's definitely worth it, and you get a nice smooth finish as well. So on to the next stage now. We're going to be using Flashkits yellow, which is a bright yellow. And we're going to mix some of that on the wet palette. I'd say about 50-50 paint to water. So keeping it thin again, because we don't want it to go streaky or lumpy. Now just focusing, so the light's hitting down from the top, so it's going to be hitting the cables from the top. This is how I normally paint these. So I'm going to paint the light at the top of the cables. So keeping it thin, just running it along the top edge of the cable using the side of the brush. And I'll do the bottom cable as well. So we're leaving the Uriel yellow and the Avalon sunset underneath. And we'll just do the back side. We'll do this a couple of coats as well. So just keeping the paint thin, building it up. I find it's best with yellow just to keep it very, very thin. Obviously, if you're doing this over a lighter undercoat, you won't need as many layers to build up that brightness. I find that most of the time when you're doing these cables, they're on power packs or bits that have been undercoated black already. So that's just made that yellow just a little bit brighter. And we'll go straight on to the next stage. And that's to use Dawn Yellow. So this is an edge paint. So again, 50-50 on the palette, water to paint. So now this is just a highlight along the top. It doesn't have to be a hard highlight, so it's just a soft one, just to knock that yellow back a little bit. Just to give it some graduation. Okay, you can do the back as well. Okay, and then once that's done, we'll go on to the next stage. Okay, so now we've got a few highlights on there. We're just going to add a little bit of shading. So now using the Scrag Brown, I'm just going to thin it down on the palette quite a lot. So we're just going to create a wash or glaze. So it's just very thin on the brush. Scrag Brown's great. It's a very warm brown, almost orange-like, and it's a really nice shade for yellow. And I'm just going to glaze some of that just where the pipes meet the metal working areas. It's just going to soften the yellow out a little bit. I'll do that at the bottom edge as well. I'll probably pop a little bit just underneath. Just to give it a little bit of shading. Make that yellow nice and rich. down between the pipes as well. And you can do this pipe technique with any colours. You don't have to do yellow. Yellow and black's really nice because it's a really strong contrast, but I've done it with red and green before, so it depends what you're painting, obviously. You can see there it's just added a little bit of depth to the yellow. And I'll do the same with just a touch of Doom Ball. You don't need a lot, but just right in the very edges there. There, it says Doom Ball, heavily watered down. Once again, Doom Ball's a great shade for yellow in the very darkest recesses. So now I've added some shading. I'm going to come back in a minute and we'll get onto the fun part. Okay, so we've got the yellow highlighted and shaded now. Now we're going to go on to some hazard lines. So this is the fun part, and also the part where we've got to be most neat. So I'm just watering down some black with some water on my palette. So this is 50-50 mix. We don't want to be too bold with this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to plot in where these lines are going to lie. So don't put your black line right next to where the pipe terminates. Just put it, the first one, in slightly. And we're just going to thinly plot it in, really lightly. And we're just going to space them down to start with. And if you do them thinner than what you think you need to start with, you can always thicken them out. So all we're doing to begin with is plotting in where we want those lines. And now they're not straight, they're slightly angled because they're going to spiral around the pipe. Now you can do them straight if you want to, but they always look better if they're slightly slanted, and it gives them that hazardous feel. Like, don't touch these pipes. And this is super thin to start with. Just plotting in where those lines are. And do it thin, because if we make a mistake or we place something where we don't want it, we can easily go over it. And it's not so bad. You'll find that this is the time where you'll want to redo things, or you'll make some slight mistakes. The idea is that you want these black lines to be the same distance, the same width as what the yellow gap is in between. So we'll thicken them as we paint through. So you notice I'm just doing the front side to begin with, because I know that if that's correct, then I can work them over the top and then down the back. So I can see there's the top one. And that slant will follow down the back of the pipe. And that's the same for the next. You know, help you guide the rest of your lines. So I'll do that all the way along, really faintly, and then we'll start thickening them out. So we'll come back in a minute because this will take a little while. So once you've done your first lot of cables and your black spirals, you will find that some of them will be a bit thicker, a bit thinner, or you've wobbled on a few. It's going to happen, it always does. So if that does happen, then just take a little bit of the light dawn yellow, and where you've gone over a little bit, just paint out some of that black with a little thin line. So I've done it in a couple of places here where I'm not entirely happy. And then just take some of the Uriel yellow, just go over that again, and that'll just neaten that up for you. So it's inevitable that painting this many lines you're going to get a few that you're not happy with, so just cut back in with that lighter highlight and just try to get them all as evenly spaced as you can, the same thickness. I've done that all the way around. So I'm just going to neaten up a few of those, and then I'm going to do this bottom cable in dark red with the yellow behind, just to show basically the same thing but with some different colours. Okay, so we'll come back in a minute. Okay, so now we've got two cables with two different coloured stripes, both over the yellow, and so we've got the dark red and the black. I'm relatively happy with the spacing and the neatness of them now, so we've just gone in and touched them up and tidied up. So at this point, what you've got is, you've got the pattern, but we want to make it feel like it's one surface really with a highlight. The trouble with this part is that you've got dark against lighter colours, so the yellow against the black. And what we want to do is, rather than going with the black, oh, we'll highlight that bit grey, and then the yellow, we'll highlight that bit with a light yellow. We're going to highlight the whole surface with a neutral highlight, and it will pull the surface together and it will make it look natural, rather than having to break the highlights along, which I've done in the past, and it's really difficult and it doesn't look as good either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Ushabti bone and I'm going to thin that down quite a lot on my palette. And this is a neutral highlight, and it will highlight both the black and the yellow. And I'm just going to run it along the top edge of the pipe very thinly. And we'll do this a few times until we're happy with the highlight we've got. So it's over the whole surface. If you do it thinly, you can build it up as much as you want. So it works as a highlight for the black and the yellow surface. It's also just tying these patterns together nicely. You can see there that it's working, and we'll do that on the bottom cable as well. Couple of highlights. You can see that working. I think at this point, this is where the cables start to look really nice with these highlights on. It gives it a very nice finish. It was only a while ago we realised that this is the best way to do it, and it's kind of one of those moments you're like, oh yeah, it's just so much easier. So I'm just going to take some Screaming Skull now, use this a lighter bone colour, thin that down, and just pop a highlight right at the very top. where the light would be most intense. Just there. So you can see the effect. So basically that is how I do the stripy cables. You can do them slanted, or you can just do them singular, that go all the way around, so they don't have to spiral. They're great on Space Marines, really good on Orky bits as well, because obviously they steal cables and they use them on those. But yeah, so there you go. So hopefully that's helped, and hopefully you'll give it a go yourself as well. And I'll see you in the next quick tips video. Cheers guys, bye.